Isaiah chapter 16, verse 1 says, "Send the lamb to the ruler of the land, from Selah to the wilderness." Here says, Shilchu Kar, where it says lamb, right here. So, to the leader, Moshel, of the land. I wanted to see what word was using for um, lamb. As we know, Yahushua is the lamb, so he's making reference to sacrifice, of course. So I'll continue. But what I wanted to see was actually what was after that. Mi Selah, from the rock. Isaiah 16. In the concordance, we have the name Selah, and it says the rock, right? As you can see right there, those who are watching the screen. So the rock, and it was a place in Edom, perhaps an early name for Petra. So it says, "Send the lamb to the ruler of the land, from Selah to the wilderness, to the mount of the daughter of Zion, the daughter of Sion. For he shall be as a wandering bird thrown out of the nest. So shall be the daughters of Moab at the fords of the Ammon." I appreciate that, Chris. So shall be the daughters of Moab at the fords of the Ammon. So, for it shall be as a wandering bird thrown out of the nest. So shall be the daughters of Moab. Remember that Moab means of his father, and he was a son of incest. In fact, Lot with one of his daughters. And remember that since that is the meaning of the name Moab, it references those who worship Satan, thinking it is the Most High. Like the Pharisees when they rejected Mashiach, and he said, "You are of your father, Satan." So shall be the daughters of Moab, in contrast to the daughter of Sion. So shall the daughters of Moab at the fords of the Arnon. Take counsel, execute judgment, make your shadow like the night in the middle of the day. Make your shadow like the night in the middle of the day. Hide the outcasts. Do not betray him who escapes. Remember how, well, remember that Isaiah and most of it is connected to the Babylonian exile, and it prophesies using those same verses regarding those times, prophesies for our time, the second Exodus. So it says, "Do not betray him who escapes. Let my outcast dwell with you, O Moab. Be a shelter to them from the face of the spoiler." You saw how they mentioned that a possible name for Selah back in the day was Petra, or that Petra was actually Selah back in the day. And I don't know if you guys have heard, but there is a doctrine that believes that the prepared place of Revelation 12, where the 144,000 will be for 1,260 days, will be at Petra. So this chapter is part of it, because he says, "Let my outcast dwell with you," as if it was the set apart place. "Be a shelter to them from the face of the spoiler." And remember that it mentioned Moab, it mentioned Selah, which was part of Edom. Remember that the last comes from Edom, and um, as we see in Isaiah 63, we will see it eventually. So the last comes as if it were a Gentile, although is a true Israelite. "Let my outcasts dwell with you, O Moab, be a shelter to them from the face of the spoiler. For the extortioner is at an end. Devastation ceases. The oppressors are consumed out of the land." So it is interesting, important also to understand that Yahweh promises to take out of the land, out of not just Israel, but out of every land, all those who are wicked. However, in Christianity, it kind of seems like they are teaching something that is completely the opposite, that Yahweh is taking all the righteous to heaven. But Yahweh says that he made the earth for men to live in it. So people are supposed to be on earth. If there is no people on earth, there's no reason for earth. So we will remain, and the wicked ones are going to be consumed out of the land. In mercy, the throne will be established. This is an amazing verse. I find it so powerful. Because remember that Yahushua came as mercy. He came to bring mercy, the forgiveness of sins. And remember that he is the cornerstone. So mercy is the cornerstone, is the foundation. And that's why it says, in mercy, the throne will be established. Remember that Yahushua came as the Kohen Gadol, as the high priest. The last comes as the Melech Gadol. And he, just like Yahushua is the temple of Yahweh, the last is the throne. And the only way for the throne to be established is in mercy, because Yahushua brought mercy so that the last can manifest and fulfill his part. For only in mercy the throne will be established. And one will sit on it in truth in the Mishkan of David. Powerful verse, and I'm not even done yet, but let me look at it in Hebrew for a moment. Vehukan bachesed, and it will be established in kindness, in mercy, or with mercy, the throne, and you will dwell over it with emet, with truth. So Yahushua is the truth. Through Yahushua, mercy was manifested, so that the last who is the throne can be established as king. And it says, with emet beohel David, in the tent of David, in the tent of David. Judgment, and those who search judgment to speed up righteousness. Let me see. 5. In mercy, the throne will be established, and one will sit on it in truth. In the tabernacle, remember that Yahweh is one. So when it says, and one will sit on it in truth, means Yahweh will sit on the throne. The throne is the last, and the only way for the last to be the throne is for Mashiach to manifest and give the mercy of Yahweh, which he already did. So it is as if, you know how Yahweh says, I am the one who was, who is, and who will be. So Yahushua is the base of the throne, the last is the throne, and then Yahweh sits on it. And that is the manifestation of he who was, who is, and who will be, ruling over the earth. And one will sit on it in truth in the tent of David, judging and seeking justice and hastening righteousness. Judging and seeking justice. For the throne to be able to be established, mercy had to manifest, which is Yahushua. And after mercy manifested, then he comes judging and seeking justice, hastening righteousness. That's why the last comes to bring judgment, which is very interesting. He who never sinned brought mercy. He who comes as the prodigal son brings justice. So I was saying, in mercy, the throne will be established, and one will sit on it in truth in the tent of David. Now, how interesting the tent of David. For remember that in Judaism, they believe that Adam was reincarnated as David, and then David would reincarnate as um pretty much his own son, would reincarnate as the one who would take the throne. So when you think about tabernacle or tent, references body, and body is pretty much the genetical part that is passed on until the one who would manifest would do so in the case of Mashiach through David, for instance. So Yahushua came in the tent of David because he was a descendant of, so he used that body. Judging and seeking justice and hastening righteousness. We have heard of the pride of Moab. I repeat, Moab represents those who worship Satan, thinking is the most high. And not thinking, I mean, not knowing that it's Satan and thinking that Satan is the most high. No, thinking that Satan is the most high, they end up worshiping Satan without knowing that it is Satan. So that's why they're so prideful, because they end up being like him. They make the same mistake. They become proud. And that's why Yahushua spoke about the Pharisees and said that we should get rid of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is pride and hypocrisy. We have heard of the pride of Moab. He is very proud of his haughtiness, and his pride and his wrath. But his lies shall not be so. Right? So Lucifer, remember also that as I explained in the book, declaring the end from the beginning, which okay, let me see here. Celio said something. Can you examine the word for lamb? It is not the main translation. It is very different word. The root of kar, that is to whirl, dance. Yeah. Remember how, for instance, kid is used for children, but it's not really a child. It comes from the goats, and it's because of how goats play. And it's pretty much the same thing with this word for lamb, kar, which is to twirl around, like you mentioned, Celio. So it's because of the movements or um, that they do, how they jump and go around and around. But let me see. It was lamb right here. Now it's interesting as well. And now that I think about it, see how it says we in the beginning of this book of this chapter, send the lamb to the ruler of the land. And then it says, in mercy the throne will be established. Who brought the mercy? The lamb. And who is the ruler? The throne. So it is confirmed in this first verse, send the lamb, Yahushua, to the ruler, the last of the land, the earth. Now listen to this. From the rock, which is Yahushua, the cornerstone, to the wilderness, which is where the last is in the apostasy. The mount, meaning the kingdom, of the daughter, meaning the congregation, of Sion, of Yahweh, pretty much, the one that he chose. For he shall be as a wandering bird, thrown out of the nest, right, because of the exile. And remember that to come back during the second Exodus, Yahweh will give the congregation eagle wings. So shall be the daughters of Moab at the fords of the Arnon. Take counsel, execute judgment, make the shadow like the night in the middle of the day. Make the shadow like the night in the middle of the day. Remember that in when we enter the Shabbat, the millennium, there will be a change in most likely north and south. They will become the other, like north will become south, south will become north. It is possible that something will happen so that either right after that it will switch night and day, or just for one day, because Yahweh says that there will be a day that will be unique in which when the afternoon comes, light will shine. So here we see, make make your shadow like the night in the middle of the day. So the day becomes the night, as it happens in the sixth seal and other parts in scriptures. Well, in the book of Revelation, I mean. Hide the outcast, do not betray him who escapes. Those who will escape the beast when he tries to put the mark on everybody. Let my outcast dwell with you, O Moab. Be a shelter to them from the face of the spoiler. for the extortioner is at an end. Devastation ceases. See how it says the extortioner. Remember how we read about, and Celio, I'll look at that word a little bit more just in a moment. Uh, Remember when we spoke about the parable that Yahushua spoke of the guy who was wise but bad or evil. So he was fired by his boss, who represents Yahweh, and the one who was fired represents Lucifer. So he went around talking to those who owe money to the owner, and he told them, "How much do you owe? All right, write the half, and let me stay with you." And then he will go to another one. "How much do you owe? 100. All right, write that you owe 50, and let me stay with you." So that's how Lucifer began to bring a third of the angels down with him. Him being the accuser, he would accuse, but then he would try to um, minimize the accusation in order to receive adoration. So he became an extortioner by asking people for sacrifices that were not for Yahweh but for him, by asking people to keep a tradition, basically the Talmud, which Yahweh had not sent, in many other ways. He extorted everybody. And that's why it says is at an end. Remember that in Revelation 12, when the chosen few are given the eagle's wings and they are going to the prepared place, the dragon will fall from heaven, and he knows that his time is short. So he's angry. It says in Revelation 12, for his time is at an end. So devastation ceases, the oppressors are consumed out of the land. And as I was saying regarding the word kad, it's interesting that kad or kaf, which is the first letter, represents the throne, and the reish represents the head, rosh. So the head on the throne, or kaf is the letter for keter, which is crown. So the crown on the head. The crown on the head is Yahushua HaMashiach. That's why he made us kings and priests. He is the lamb, and he is the one who gives us the crown on the head, and he is the head, and many other things that we could say, mainly with what we are reading regarding the throne. I find interesting that Yahweh used that word instead of other words that are also used for lamb. A pasture, meadow, ram, lamb, he lamb. So going back. In mercy, the throne will be established, and one will sit on it in truth, in the tent of David, judging and seeking justice and hastening righteousness. We have heard of the pride of Moab. He is very proud of his haughtiness and his pride and his wrath. That is, those three are main characteristics of Lucifer: haughtiness, pride, wrath. You remember there is a verse, and I'm sorry you don't have the screen right so you can see it, but you can look for it if you want, or just listen. Um, and I know you've heard of it, but this is a good part to say it or show it again. Um, in Chronicles, First Chronicles 27:24. Just a second. Yeah, it's this one, but let me go back a little bit. It's not the 24. So I think it's the one before that. Well, the point is, remember when David made a census? The other day, somebody was asking me, how many people are we in the congregation? I was like, maybe one day I can count. No, I'm not going to count them. Yeah, I remember David like straight away. Yeah, even if we try, it is not possible. But yeah, it was funny. Um, so let me go. How's that? 144,000. Yeah, it's like, yeah, that's pretty much. Yeah. Take none. So listen to this. 2 Samuel 24:1. This is a crazy version. I don't know if you've heard of it. I don't know. Yeah, okay, perfect. Again, the anger of Yahweh was aroused, right? So in Hebrew, let me see what word is using for anger. It says, and it's interesting what it says, Vayosef, Yosef, as in the wrath of Yahweh will manifest through a descendant of Joseph. Joseph means he will add. So he's saying here, he will add the wrath of Yahweh. And you see, wrath is the word af, which is nose, which shows anger. So it represents anger. So he will add the anger of Yahweh. But how interesting, I repeat, that he mentions pretty much the name Yosef. Actually, the name Yosef is right there because if I take the letter Vav, which is the first letter here, and I put it as the second letter, we have the name Yosef. So that's the name Yosef, just two letters in the different position. And then he says, I will, and he will add wrath, the wrath of Yahweh. So, in the one that we are reading right now in Isaiah, the word that he used for wrath, 6, is this one thing, yeah. Um, Everato, Everato, okay. Referring to the burning of the anger. So, going back to this one in Samuel. So it says, again, the anger of Yahweh was aroused against Israel, and he moved David against them to say, go number Israel and Yehudah. All right, so then there's another verse. First Chronicles 21, verse 1. It says, now Satan stood up against Israel and moved David to number Israel. So people use this verse and then they go back to Samuel and he says, again, the anger of Yahweh was aroused against Israel and he moved David against them to say, so how is it that one says Satan and the other one says the anger of Yahweh? Is because Satan is the angel that would manifest the anger of Yahweh, is the one that would destroy what needed to be destroyed. But he went overboard. And Yahweh tells him several times throughout scriptures. That's why it says the anger of Yahweh was aroused against Israel. And he, who's he? The angel who is the anger, not Yahweh. But they take it as if it was Yahweh. So then it is a contradiction with Chronicles that says Satan. Is that clear? A little bit? Okay. So, all right. So here we see that Yahweh is talking about him and he says, of his haughtiness, his pride, and his wrath. But but his lies shall not be so. Because remember that Yahushua is the truth and Lucifer is preparing the lie, which is the false Messiah. But his lies shall not be so. Therefore, Moab shall wail for Moab. Everyone shall wail. For the foundations of Kir Hareset you shall mourn. Surely they are stricken. The city, let me see. Kir Hareset, it says, well, let's just say city or wall. Well, you remember the cities were surrounded by walls, so that's why. So, wall of potsherds or city of potsherds. And remember that Yahweh is the main potsherd in the sense that he made the body. Well, he made humans. And then we could talk about a lot more that we've been talking these days, but not right now. So in the sense of um, giving shape to the body. For the foundations of Kir Hareset, you shall mourn. So listen to this when you think about what we've been talking about. And that I've said a little bit. in the scripture. I mean, in the congregation when we read Genesis and all of that. But how interesting that it says the foundations, as in the beginning, the very beginning, when Elohim formed man from the dust of the earth. Elohim. For the foundations of Kir Hareset, meaning the city of the potsherd, he who makes vessels. You shall mourn for the foundation of the shaping of the body, you shall mourn. Surely they are stricken, those who were involved. For the fields of Heshbon languish, and the vine of Sibmah. Heshbon and Sibmah. Is different. Okay, it's another name that I didn't see before, or maybe they translated it instead of. There are several names here. Let me just open them real quick. So there was one that says Yazeir, which means helped. Yeah, he will help. Oh, where was it? You shall mourn, surely they are stricken for the fields of Heshbon. I don't know why there is another name. Oh, it's farther along. So, yeah. So for the fields of Heshbon, Heshbon means stronghold. Then there's another one, Sevam, or Shib, Shibma, as it appears there. I don't know why, because it's Sevam, means fragrance. And Elalei, Elohim is ascending. All right, so it says, for the fields of Heshbon, which was a stronghold. For the fields of the stronghold languish. So those who are strong in heaven languish. And the vine, remember that Israel is the vine. And the vine of Sibmah, which was fragrance. The vine of the fragrance. Remember that our works, our deeds should be a good fragrance to Yahweh. And the vine of fragrance. The sovereigns of the nations have broken down its choice plants, confirming that the nations have heard Israel, the vine of fragrance, which have reached to Yazer, which have reached to the helped. So we have reached Mashiach, he who was helped by Yahweh, and wandered through the wilderness. What's happening? Oh, okay. Sorry. Which have reached to Yazer and wandered through the wilderness. Her branches are stretched out. They are gone over the sea, right? Because Israel went over the sea to all the nations, their branches over the sea, because their fruit landed on other lands, us. Therefore, I will bewail the vine of Sibmah with the weeping of Yazer. I will drench you with my tears, O Heshbon and Eliale, O stronghold and the mighty one ascending, or the mighty one who ascends. I will drench you with tears, with my tears, O stronghold and mighty one who ascends. A couple things that could be said here. In the negative, Heshbon, with what I was saying, connects with the fact that you see here, for the fields of Heshbon languish, which goes with the fact that the foundations of the potsherd shall mourn, surely they are stricken. So that stronghold that was Elohim and the authorities, and when I say Elohim, I mean the angels that were under Yahweh at the moment, and well, they will always be under. So we are at war in a spiritual battle against principalities, but first against authorities. So the authorities are seven, one of which, or the leader of which, is Samael. And then comes the principalities, and there we have Halel, Lucifer. So Heshbon makes reference to the beginning, the foundation, when the foundations were placed. and they felt they were strong. They were a stronghold. And then this references Israel. But here it mentions both Heshbon as Samael and Eliale as Halel. Because what did Halel say? And in fact, it was in the chapter 14 of Isaiah, so 2 chapters back. Halel said, I will ascend and be like the Most High. And here it says, the mighty one who ascends. Obviously, in the positive sense, Yahushua came to establish the kingdom as a stronghold, and then he ascended to the Father. With the weeping of Yasser, I will drench you with my tears, O Heshbon and Eliale, for battle cries have fallen over your summer fruits and your harvest. Your harvest. Gladness is taken away, and joy from the plentiful field. In the vineyards there will be no singing, nor will there be shouting. No treaders will tread out wine in the presses. I have made their shouting cease. Therefore my heart shall resound like a harp for Moab. This is interesting. Remember that? Well, it says here belly. So they translate it to harp because they feel weird that it says belly. Therefore my belly shall resound. Therefore, that is 11. But 10, most likely. Al Cain Meyai Lemoab. The bowels. Meyeh. Meyeh. Belly. They translated once as heart, once as womb, 3 times as belly, 27 as bowels. So my bowels. We're saying then. Therefore my bowels shall resound like a harp of Moab. But you know, oh, that something interesting about this, that there are some instruments that are made with bowels of animals because of the texture. Well, no, because of how much they can. The stretchiness. Yeah, the stretchiness. Yeah, so they will use that as strings to make music. So how funny that he's now saying my bowels will work as a harp in the sense of you will speak through me. Your voice will speak through my interior. So therefore my heart shall resound, well, my bowels shall resound like a harp for Moab. When you're hungry. And my inner being for Kid Hedes. And my inner being for Kid Hedes, which is like the one previously Kid has had said, right? My inner being. So you see how it says my bowels and my inner being, which one could say is the same thing, but he says it twice in 2 different ways to show how he is one, yet he manifests twice as first and last. Bowels, inner being. Reason why he says it in those 2 ways. And let me see what term uses for inward parts. That is kerev. Yeah, inside. Within. In the middle. So kerev. All right. So, and my inner being for kid hedeset. And you see how he uses similar words. May I le Moab. You see how it starts with mem, may I, Moab. Then it says kakinor kirbi lekir. So kir, kir, kir. All right, so I'll continue with this verse 12. And it shall come to pass when it is seen that Moab is weary on the high place, that he will come to his set apart place to pray, but he will not prevail. And as we know, many will pray to their mighty one after the death of the 2 witnesses. Some will even pray to Yahweh himself, but he won't listen, like he said yesterday in what we read in YishaYahu, remember? Do not pray for these people, for when they call on me, I won't hear them. So, and it shall come to pass when it is seen that Moab is weary on the high place, that he will come to his set apart place to pray, but he will not prevail. This is the word which Yahweh has spoken concerning Moab since that time. But now Yahweh has spoken, saying, within 3 years, within 3 years, and how crazy it is. Well, we've been waiting for the end. Well, for the last 7 years to begin, and this year is looking like very, very, very possibly could be the first. We will know with the official war happening. Even though my sister sent me an article that was saying that the third war already started, and once again, I repeat that when it is official for everybody, then we know second seal plus what will happen in Israel regarding the sacrifices that they want to make. But you saw how today I published a new video with a little bit of fun, but also a little bit of teaching. I'm going to try and put teaching on those comedy videos that I'm going to make. I love comedy, you guys know. And I will put some teaching on it so that those who get it will get it and those who don't won't, but at least they will laugh. And then they will realize later on. And I don't know if you saw, but I put as the year for Sodom and Gomorrah's destruction 2028 BCE. So 2000, because it's around 2000 years before Mashiach that it happened. So I put 2028 because it's pretty much a mirror of what is about to happen. And 2028 is in 3 years. And then we read this. I mean, come on. Within 3 years, as the years of a hired man, as in go you and preach, the the steam of Moab will be despised with all that great multitude, and the remnant will be very small and feeble. Those of his father will realize who they are and they will be despised. So yeah, that was interesting, the 3 years. So let's write it in the calendar.